Hello, welcome back to RetroBreak. In today's video I'm going to be showing you all the games that I picked up from Revival 2019. So let's get started. The first one here, and this is one that I was very excited to find. If you saw my tour of the event from last week, you will know that I was very excited to pick up the next Tetris for the Dreamcast. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to play it yet because my Dreamcast doesn't seem to be working at the minute. Not entirely sure why, so fingers crossed I can either get it fixed or get a new one at some point, because this is a game that I've been looking for a long time, and it's actually one of the very few Dreamcast games that I still need for my collection. So I'm really looking forward to trying the next Tetris out. It is one that I've been looking for a long time. Next up, this is another game that you will know that I picked up if you saw my tour of the event. This one's called Gates of Zendokon for the Atari Lynx. Unfortunately, I didn't really think this game was as good as everyone had made it out to be, from what I've heard online. It seems really slow. I know it's quite impressive for the system, the way they made the sprite scaling work and stuff. It is a really impressive game visually, but gameplay-wise, I really didn't think that much of it. Now here, I've got two interesting games. These are both reproduction original Game Boy games. Actually, this one's for the Game Boy Color, this one's the original Game Boy. So the first game we've got here is Tremp World, which if you were to buy the actual official European release of this game, it would easily be about 200 quid, and I got this one for £2. So until I managed to save up the money to get an official copy of the game, which I really would like to get at some point in the future to finish off my Game Boy collection. Until that time though, this is the next best thing. It's a fantastic game. I actually had it already on the 3DS, on the Game Boy Virtual Console on there, and I really enjoy it. It's a very good game for the Game Boy. Highly recommend it, but obviously if you want to get it officially, it's very expensive. And the next one here, another expensive game, not quite as bad as Tremp World. This one is Lufia: The Legend Returns. And this is a repro, as I said, for the Game Boy Color. I haven't played much of this, but I really like the Lufia RPG games, especially Lufia 2 on the SNES. That's actually probably the most expensive game that I've ever bought, but I do absolutely love it, and I've always wanted to try out the Game Boy Color game, so at least I can finally give it a go now. Apparently there's one on the Game Boy Advance as well, but I don't know whether that one's actually any good or not. If you know, let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll pick it up at some point in the future, but I'm definitely looking forward to giving this one a go. We may as well go through some more Game Boy games, as we're on the topic of Game Boy games. There's 4 Game Boy Color games here. The first one is Magical Drop. This is a very famous Neo Geo puzzle game. I think it's actually out on the Switch as well now, so this is just the Game Boy Color version of that. They all play pretty much the same. I think this one's got a little bit of a story mode to go along with it. Really great puzzle game. Can't go wrong with whatever version you choose to play of it. And this one here, I think I've read a review of this one in a Game Boy magazine back in the day, and I heard that it was pretty good, so I picked it up. It was only a few quid. This is Maiya the B. Really haven't played it very much. It looks like some sort of top-down adventure RPG style game where you play as a bee, apparently. So if you guys know anything about this game, if you know it's worth carrying on with or not, let me know. And if you ever played it growing up, that'd be really cool to know as well. Now the next one here, this is the Game Boy Color version of one of my favourite Dreamcast games ever. This is San Francisco Rush 2049. I've never actually played the Game Boy Color version before, so I was very excited to find this one. And it actually plays really well. Of course, it's a top-down racer rather than an into-the-screen racer, and you don't get the fly-in mechanics that you get on the Dreamcast game, but even so, really good port to the Game Boy Color. And it's just really interesting to see how the developers took 16 and 128-bit games and downscaled them onto an 8-bit system. So maybe I'll do a video about that in the future, because it is a topic that really interests me. You know, there was loads of N64 games, Dreamcast games and stuff that were ported to the Game Boy Color, and it's just really interesting to see how they turned out. And on the topic of N64 games on the Game Boy Color, here's Space Station Silicon Valley. One of my favourite games on the N64. This is another one that was really interesting to see how they took the base game and turned it into a 2D side-scrolling platformer, and it seems to work quite well actually. I've never really heard anything about the Game Boy Color version before, but from what I've played, it seems really good. And the last one here for the Game Boy Color, this is one that I've wanted for a long time. I'm a huge fan of Micro Machines, especially Micro Machines 2 Turbo Tournament on the SNES. This is Micro Machines 1 and 2 Twin Turbo. for the Game Boy Color. So it takes Micro Machines 1 and 2 and puts them all into one nice package, and it actually looks and plays really, really well on the Game Boy Color, so very impressed with this one. And now for some Japanese Game Boy games. I've got 3 here. 2 I was very, very excited to get, so we'll start with them. The first one is Mario's Picross 2. So the second Mario Picross game only ever came out in Japan, and it seems like a great continuation of the first one. This one actually has a story mode to go along with it. I think you're going through a museum sort of thing, and you can actually interact with the different exhibits in the museum, and that becomes the stage for you to beat in the game. So really looking forward to playing some more Picross with this one. And the next one here, another one that I was very excited to find. This is Game Boy Wars, the original version of Advance Wars. There was loads of games in this series dating all the way back to the Game Boy and to the Famicom in Japan, but the first one we ever saw outside of Japan was Advance Wars for the Game Boy Advance. So it's really, really interesting to go back and see how that series evolved into what we got as Advance Wars in the UK. So really, really happy to have this one, and I would love to find the other Famicom and Game Boy Wars games in the future. So really, really cool to have that one. And the last one here for the Japanese Game Boy is a Crayon Shinchan game. And I really don't know anything about this one, but I know Crayon Shinchan is very popular in Japan, very popular cartoon character. Now a few Japanese Game Boy Advance games. We have Mr. Driller A, which is yet another version of Mr. Driller. Fantastic puzzle game. If you've never seen Mr. Driller before, it's a very addictive game where you basically just have to drill down as far as you can possibly get, and you pick up air along the way, and you just have to keep going and going until you either run out of air or you reach the end of the stage. So really happy to have that one. The next one here is Rhythm Heaven, or Rhythm Paradise in the UK, I think that's what it was called. This is the original version of it for the Game Boy Advance, another game that we never got outside of Japan, so it's really cool to have this one. I think the first one we got here in the UK was on the DS, so it's really interesting to go back and see how they built the DS game off what had come before it, so it's really good to have that one. And the final game we have here for the Game Boy Advance is Chobits. Unfortunately, of course, this game's entirely in Japanese, and I don't think there's a translation patch out there online, but I love the Chobits series and the Chobits manga, so I was just really excited to find this one. And Vintage Gamer, as I said in the tour, gave me a fantastic deal on all those Japanese Game Boy Advance games, so I was really, really happy to find them. And one more Japanese game, and then I've got 2 more, and I'm definitely saving the best till last. So here we have Tiny Toons Adventures for the Super Famicom. I've heard loads of good things about this game, and I did find it in the box, but it was a bit too expensive, and then the next stall I went to, I actually found it cart only, so here it is. It plays really, really well, as you would expect from Konami in the 16-bit era. They could do no wrong, honestly. Fantastic game from what I've played so far. I'm really, really enjoying it, and it's definitely one that I'm going to go back to and play some more of in the future. And now another game from Vintage Gamer that I picked up, and this is an amazing price for this game. This is Super Mario All-Stars and Super Mario World on one cartridge. I've never actually had the 2-in-1 version here before. This one actually came with the SNES console later on in the SNES's life cycle. So it's kind of hard to get hold of, so I'm really happy to have this. And of course it's just great to have both of these amazing games on one cart, and all for 10 quid. Really can't go wrong for that. And now, leaving the best till last, as I said, this one is a game, I think you just saw it. It's a game for the CDI. It's very well known on YouTube for its awful cutscenes and kind of mediocre gameplay. I'm very excited to play it. I can't actually play it at the minute because for the CDI I don't actually have a proper controller for it. But here it is, Zelda Wand of Gamelon for the CDI. I have no idea why I've done this, and I'm definitely going to play it because it cost a lot of money and it's a hilarious game, and I think it's going to make a brilliant episode on YouTube, if nothing else. So there we go, and just to show you guys, there's the disc, and the manual is actually, like most CDs, the manual is part of the cover. So if I take this out, I'll do some close-ups, but there's a few little pages of how to play the game in there, so definitely looking forward to trying it out, but I've got to get a controller for the CDI first, as I just said. So anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. This was my pickups from the amazing event replay 2019. If you check the description, you can find a link to my tour of the show. I go into loads of detail, all the different stalls that were there, all the stuff that was for sale. It was a fantastic event, and I'm definitely going to be going back next year. So thank you so much for watching. Please comment, subscribe, and as I've just been told on Twitter, after you've subscribed, you also need to press a little bell icon and click show all notifications, because for some reason pressing subscribe doesn't actually tell you when I've released a video, which is a little bit annoying, but never mind. That's just what YouTube wants to do, so can't really do anything about it. So do that thing with the bell that you have to do, and I'll see you next week for another episode. Goodbye!